Good morning, race fans. Welcome to another edition of We Really Woke Up at 6 in the morning for this. This weekend we had the Formula 1 2025 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And listen, people love to complain about Baku, and I get it. This year's race was a little underwhelming. But forget about the race. After a quali like that, how can you hate her? Plus, she's been renewed until 2030, so you're stuck with her anyway. So let's talk about what went down here at the Race Day Cafe. The FIA election watch continues. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new candidate for the FIA presidency. Laura Villars. I'm saying it with a Spanish accent because I don't know how to pronounce it. A 28-year-old Swiss racing driver and the first woman to ever enter a race for the FIA presidency. Her proposed policies advocate for sustainability, safety, transparency, and inclusion of women in motorsport. Sounds pretty good to me. Also, who better for the FIA presidency than an actual current racing driver? All I hope is that this means fewer chances for MBS because honestly, I don't think I can handle another 4 years of him. The FIA also rescinded Carlos Sainz's penalty in Zandvoort. Took him long enough, and Max Verstappen got his GT3 license. Also, Fernando Alonso kind of hinted that he wants to go racing with Max in Le Mans. Can you imagine Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso in the same team at Le Mans? I would pay good money to see that. In free practice, we saw basically everyone clip the wall. Also, the Ferraris looked really good in FP2, which was definitely an accurate prediction for the race. But enough about all that. We need to talk about qualifying. Folks, I'm sorry if we end up discussing qualifying longer than the race, but honestly, I have no shame in doing that. I dare say that was one of the craziest qualifying sessions in Formula 1. We open the session with Alex Albon binning it into the wall 4 minutes into Q1, and Kimi Antonelli gets investigated for skipping a double yellow flag. Then the cars come back out only for Nico Hülkenberg to crash and damage his front wing. Thankfully, his car is not totally damaged, so he's able to get back in the pits and keep going. Antonelli's lap time gets deleted. Gabriel is noted for a yellow flag infringement, and Pierre Gasly crashes right as the clock hits 0, and it causes his teammate Colapinto to crash as well. God bless Alonso, who managed to set a lap right before Gasly crashed, and Stroll too, I guess. In Q2, it takes all of 3 minutes for another driver to crash, this time Ollie Behrman, literally the one driver who needed to have a clean weekend. But I guess if he's out, that's one less chance for him to get a race ban, so maybe this was all premeditated. Charles Leclerc goes off track, and thankfully he doesn't crash, but it affects Lewis Hamilton's ability to set a lap. So Lewis only goes P10, which then becomes a P12. So Lewis tries to go out for another lap at the last minute, but he ends up pitting instead because of reasons. I hate it so much here, so much. In Q3, Russell goes into the runoff and nearly hits Norris while reversing out of it, and like clockwork, Leclerc crashes into turn 15. So that means that currently on pole we have Carlos Sainz?
Well, you can start dancing to see if it rains a bit harder now.
I love this man. And as we restart the session with 3 minutes to go, Oscar Piastri hits the wall, meaning Verstappen is unable to set a time and Sainz remains on pole. Honestly, Louis the Fly, I think I'm starting to believe you. McLaren sabotaged Oscar so that Lando could catch up in the standings. I have no proof, but also no doubts. So then it's basically Max v Lando for pole, but Lando manages to put in the worst lap ever seen around Baku, which only leaves him in P6. And Max takes the pole, because of course. Our starting grid is Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, and Liam Lawson. A Red Bull family full house, 6 red flags in total in a period of 2.5 hours, literally longer than last year's Grand Prix here. And to top it all off, Esteban Ocon got disqualified because his wing was the wrong size. I genuinely think this quali took years off my life. But you know what? If that's the case, I can die happy after having seen that. Now let's talk about the race, which was sadly a lot less interesting. We start the race and Oscar Piastri has a series of unfortunate events, the likes of which has not been seen since Max Verstappen in Spain. Starting from P10, he first jumps the start, then he realizes and hits anti-stall to avoid being penalized. Spoiler alert. He would have been penalized anyway, which put him in P20. And then he said, fuck it, what's the point? And crashed into the wall. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever Formula 1 season entirely scripted for Drive to Survive. 3 weeks ago, Lando Norris got the Zandvoort 0. Now Piastri's the one who's out. Can Lando Norris even out the title fight? Seriously though, at this point of the race, I'm thinking if Lando doesn't capitalize and put that McLaren on the podium, I fear he might not deserve this title. Other stuff at the start, Verstappen, Sainz, and Lawson kept their positions. Isaac Hadjar and Lewis Hamilton went up a few places. And apparently Alonso also had a false start in reaction to Oscar doing the same thing. So he got a 5-second penalty for that. Oopsies! The safety car ends at the end of lap 4 and Max takes his sweet little time to start the race again. My dude, you may have this in the bag, but there's other people behind you who are actually trying to have a race, you know? Hey, I'm racing here! Isaac Hadjar is overtaken by Lando Norris, and we have a little battle between him and Hamilton. But the 7-time champion passes the V-carb to make a McLaren sandwich with Ferrari bread. Tsunoda defends Russell and makes him waste a ton of time, which is great news for any Carlos Sainz fans out there. They start telling us that it's gonna rain. Surely that won't turn out to be a complete lie. Apparently by now, Colapinto has built a gap big enough that Fernando Alonso ahead could pit and not lose a place, which definitely has nothing to do with Briatore. What are you talking about? We do love Hispanic solidarity though. Oh my god, guys. They put Oscar Piastri in jail. No. La polizia. Well, you know what they say. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. There's a collision between Albon and Colapinto. Franco is thankfully okay though, so there's no safety car. But Albon gets a 10-second penalty in what is the fastest FIA decision I've ever seen, I think. And they'll say there's no racism in Formula 1. George Russell is putting pressure on the team to let him swap with Antonelli because he has more pace. So Mercedes pits Antonelli because they're a classy team. They're above doing team orders like plebeians. Liam Lawson then pits and comes out right ahead of Antonelli, so the undercut technically failed. Damn, so now it'll be really hard for Antonelli to pass him. Actually, it's super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Lando Norris tries to pit and undercut Tsunoda, but his pit stop turns out to be 4.1 seconds long. And so not only does he not overtake Tsunoda, he gets passed by Leclerc. And they don't have Oscar to help him now. 3 words. Poetic fucking justice. Okay, eventually Lando does pass Leclerc, so it's not like it's a huge life-changing issue. But still, McLaren fucked around. Now they're finding out. George Russell pits and comes out still in P2, and Max Verstappen also pits, and naturally, he keeps the lead. Hamilton passes Leclerc because he has a tire advantage, and he joins this little battle between Lawson, Tsunoda, and Norris for P5. Meanwhile, Verstappen goes on one of his fastest lap side quests, the classic move of the Grand Chelem for no other reason than to fuck with everyone a little more. Apparently, he's led more laps this season than Lando Norris. Anyways, we get to the final lap, and nothing happens. Literally none of these 4 people do anything useful. Which means Max Verstappen wins his 2nd race in a row with George Russell in P2 and the one, the only, Carlos Sainz in P3, winning the first Williams podium since 2017. Bonus points for Baku for playing smooth operator while he was getting out of the car. And let's not forget the one person we need to thank for this, Sparkles the unicorn. Thank you for this podium, Sparkles. You will always be famous. That was the race. Now let's go over my superlatives. This week's ace of the race is, of course, Carlos Sainz. Qualified 2nd and finished 3rd in a Williams. Need I say more? Also, yes, I know he benefited from the rain and from the red flags during quali, but also that first lap in Q3 was enough to fend off all of the faster cars, except Max. I think there's only one thing to do here, so copyright infringement laws permitting, everybody please join me in the national anthem. Smooth operator. My honorable mention for ace of the race is Liam Lawson. Folks, I'm gonna be so honest, I never thought I'd see the day where Liam Lawson would be one of the aces of the race. Oh, how the turntables. Lawson may not have been able to hold on to the podium the entire race, but he did do so during the first stint. And then he was the victim of Mercedes' undercut and overcut, but once he was in P5, he defended that position impressively, especially when all the cars behind him should have been way faster. So yeah, maybe I've been wrong about Liam, but I'm happy to have been wrong. This weekend's disgrace of the race is Oscar Piastri. It's just so strange to see him crash out of both quali and the race. Pretty much the only major mistake like this he's made was in Australia. in March. I don't mean to frame this in a way that's like Oscar is a perfect little robot and he's not allowed to make a single mistake, but it is rare to see him make them because he's been so consistent this year. He raised the bar too high and unfortunately died of success. Sorry guys, it's over. Oscar is officially washed. Do not count on him to win the title. Nah, just kidding, obviously. He'll win again next weekend. Just watch. My honorable mention for disgrace of the race is Lando Norris. Obviously, I can't come on here and say that Lando is terrible and he's worse than Oscar because Oscar is the one who binned it twice, but I do think that this was Lando's golden opportunity to regain a lot of points in the championship and balance out the driver's title again. And you mean to tell me that the best he could do was P7? To be fair, a small part of the blame maybe goes to the team for that slow pit stop, but the rest, it seems to me, was just Lando buckling under pressure. I don't know, maybe there are other factors that I'm forgetting about or not aware of, but I'm just a little surprised that he was unable to take the McLaren into, at the very least, the podium. At the very least, the top 5. Like, none of these people should have been competition, except maybe Max. At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised if Max ends up having more points than Lando by the end of the season. 69 points is a lot, but knowing Max, he'll make it look like a walk in the park. This weekend's strategy masterclass goes to Mercedes. Finally, a team who's not afraid to make driver swaps. Looking at you, Ferrari in Miami 2025. To be fair, it did take Mercedes a second to make the call, but still. They also did a great job with Russell's strategy and his pit stop, securing an overcut on Sainz and a podium for the team. And I believe Mercedes has now passed Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. Also, while we're at it, let's credit Russell, who was apparently sick the entire weekend, but still managed an incredible performance. And Antonelli, to his credit, did get kinda close to Carlos towards the end of the race, but then Carlos hit him with a "leave me to it" and miraculously extended the gap. This week's underdog shoutout goes to Yuki Tsunoda. There's evidently some Etsy witch magic at play here because every time we get to Baku, the second Red Bull just magically becomes goated. Tsunoda put up such an elite defense against Lando and the Ferraris at the end of the race. He said, "On God, I am gonna help my teammate win this race," and he did. And he also secured a great 6th place for himself. I feel like because Yuki's always more toward the back, I tend to forget what an aggressive driver he can be sometimes. I love you, Yuki. Thank you for always making races infinitely funnier. My favorite team radio of the day, without a doubt, is... Just wanted to say... This is my first smooth operation in Williams. Not the last, and not the last. I also would like to award a Drama Queen crown, not for the race, but for something that happened in quali that was just too good to pass up in my opinion. And it's Oscar's reaction to Lando bottling pole position.
There you go.
Race fans, I think it's become abundantly clear that we need villains in Formula 1, and I need Oscar Piastri to be the next villain so bad. I think none of us are prepared for what his evil era could look like. It would go so unfathomably hard. So yeah, Drama Queen crown for Oscar. Congratulations, my dear. The best moment of the weekend, Carlos Sainz podium. Next question. The worst moment of the weekend, besides Oscar's crashes, I would say Ferrari sucking as per usual. This team was literally in the running for pole this weekend. So why on God's green earth are they both? I've said it before, but I truly can't comprehend why Lewis chose to go to that team willingly. The Lion should not concern himself with Ferrari. At least Max seems to be aware of that, thank God. I really hope we never see him ruin his career there. Overall, I'm rating this race a 3 out of 5 stars. Some fun things happened, but it was not worth getting up at 6:30 a.m. in my case. My sincerest condolences to anybody who lives in Pacific Standard Time. And finally, let's review the 2025 prediction bingo. As per all the comments I received in the Monza video, I've decided to add papaya rules, because that moment really was just papaya rules part 2. I was about to say we could add McLaren v Ferrari for constructors, but that's not even technically true anymore, so I got nothing. But what is true is that we just surpassed 10,000 subscribers on this channel. I really want to say thank you so much to all of you from the bottom of my heart. It's been amazing to have all your support on this incredible journey so far. A lot of you suggested that I do a shoey to celebrate, but I think it's gonna take a little more than that for me to do a shoey because shoeys are pretty nasty. But for now, we'll figure out something else. Stay fueled, and remember, fuck papaya rules.